Hello folks, Scott here with my 10 cards 1 kit video featuring the Love from Lizi March 2020 card kit. Before we get started, I have a couple of sidebars. First off, I actually got to meet Lizi face to face for the very first time. Lizi was in town for some rest and relaxation and shopping therapy, and we got to meet for some coffee and cake at a little coffee shop nearby my work in Midtown. It was so nice to meet her and sit and chat with her. We spent a couple hours just chatting about family and, of course, crafting. I could have bent Lizi's ear all day long. And sidebar number 2, we have winners to announce from my 5,000 subscriber giveaway. All of these people have been notified already, but to make it official, this is our list of winners. We have Carol Lynn Carnes, who won the 50-pound shopping spree at Love From Lizi. We have Christy Eagles, won the My Monthly Hero August of 2019 card kit. Jean Trumbull won a set of 12 peel-offs, and Jean Thompson and Angela Griffin both won a set of 5 cards from me, from Card Cut-Ups. That's our winners. Thank you so much to everybody for entering. It's always great fun to be able to give some stuff and pay back a little bit of all the support that you guys have given me. So let's get to it. Here's my 10 cards. I do use the cardstock Lizi provides in the kit to make all of my card bases. Now, I was really taken by all of the cardstock and pattern papers and cut-apart sheets in this kit. It was all high quality and some great images, a very masculine kit, I thought. So to get us started, we're on a navy card base, and we have "You Are the Wind Beneath My Wings." Of course, using that large owl stamp in our stamp set. You are the wind beneath my wings. I love the fact that that stamp is so large that it commands the attention on a whole card front. I took a piece of Pitch Black Hero Arts cardstock and I stamped that owl stamp in the top left using Versamark ink, and I embossed that using Love From Lizi Golden Crown embossing powder. I did go in with a little cream colored pencil and filled in the open spaces on this bird. One of the interesting things about these stamps is that they emboss beautifully. When you've got so much detail on a stamp like this, there's not much room to color, but there's plenty of room to emboss. I then took my Spectrum Noir sparkle pen and I flicked it on the side of an acrylic block to put some sparkle on this background. I die cut that piece of pitch black with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, gave it a very thin little white frame, and then mounted that to my navy card base. I printed up these 2 parts of the sentiment using my Silhouette software and the Body MT condensed light font. That's the font. That's how it came out. I printed that on a scrap of cardstock. I cut those out with a Lawn Fawn Everyday Sentiment banner die, trimmed those down, and I actually embossed those with some clear embossing powder too. Now, the wind, of course, is the wood veneer die cuts from our embellishment bag. Now, when I did my unboxing, I mentioned that the letters had white on one side and the regular wood on the other side, but that white is actually just a liner paper, and it peels off and exposes adhesive. So these are self-adhesive wood veneer die cut alphas. I embossed the wind using that same Golden Crown embossing powder, glued that down to the card front using the adhesive on the back, trimmed the other parts of the sentiment down and mounted them to the card front with some foam tape. For a final touch, I added some of the Black Ebony Nouveau drops. We got those in our August 18 kit from Lizi, and that's our card. Did you ever know that you're my hero? You are the wind beneath my wings. It's nice to have a nice large bird stamp like that in my stash. Now, I don't usually do square cards, but I think I had a really good reason to make this a square card. This is on one of the off-white card bases, and we have I Love You Just As You Are with that great boxing pair. This makes me giggle a lot. Now, this is the pair of boxers that was on one of our cut-apart sheets. It had a white outline around it already, so it was kind of begging to be fussy cut out. So that's what I did. I fussy cut it out. I added a little bit of color to that image with just some simple colored pencils. I took one of the off-white card bases and trimmed it down so it was 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. This is a top folding note card. The background here is that antique ceiling tile that was on the same cut-apart sheet as the boxers. I glued that right down to our card fronts. I used the peel-offs from the kit to outline that, so there's some nice shine around that. For the sentiment, I did split that sentiment sentence by sentence, stamp surgery, and stamp that on some of the scraps of the off-white cardstock that I trimmed off. So that's stamped in VersaFine Onyx Black ink and then embossed with some clear embossing powder. So that has a little bit of shine to it too. I Love You Just As You Are. I tell you, I know lots of couples that this card would be perfect for. And isn't that a good sign that you're in a great relationship when you can actually fight really well? I love you just as you are. This makes me giggle. Now, I did let a lot of the images and patterns and stuff in this kit kind of inspire me for these 10 cards, and I didn't feel like I needed to be a slave to the stamp set. But here's my third card using one of the nice stamps from that set. Be Yourself. That's that large feather stamp. Really nice feather stamp. I stamped that on a piece of Love From Lizi Super Smooth white cardstock, alcohol marker friendly. I used some archival ink in Acorn so that I could use my alcohol markers to color that. I used my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers to color that, and then I did fussy cut that out. It wasn't that difficult. It might look like it is, but it really wasn't. Now, I took some of our shimmer powder from Nuvo, that Storm Cloud shimmer powder. I mixed up just a little of that with some water to spatter the card front. This is all on the gray card base, so I did a little black spatter on the card front there. It's hard to see any sparkle in that shimmer powder when you're using quite such a small amount, but I do like the spatter on the background here. This is from one of our pattern papers. This is cut 2 inches wide, 5 inches tall, and then it's matted on a piece of our gray pearlescent cardstock and then glued down to the card front. Be Yourself is from our sentiment sticker sheet. I mounted that and our feather to the front of this card using some foam tape. Now, there is a little bit more to this card than just Be Yourself. On the inside, we've got Everyone Else Is Already Taken. Again, I reached for my Silhouette software and printed this up on the inside of this card front using my little piggyback printing method. This is in the typewriter hand font, and this is actually an old quote from Oscar Wilde. Who knew that Oscar Wilde was the one that said that? Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. A few of the black sequins from our sequin mix adds a fine little touch of sparkle to the front of this card. I really like that purple and green feather there. Very unique. Be yourself. Now, sometimes it's the simplest images that will catch my eye and spark my imagination. This is on one of our white card bases, and we have Bend with the Wind and Remain Unbroken. I really like this card quite a lot. This is one of the cut-aparts from our cut-apart sheet. I really liked the movement that this illustration gave. So for this card, the background is a piece of watercolor cardstock. I sprinkled some of our shimmer powder on top of that and then used my mini mister to spray water on top of that. I sprayed it very sparingly. I didn't want all of the powder to run together. I wanted the water and the shimmer powder to work their magic on their own. I'm very pleased with how that came out. It kind of looks like storm clouds or definite weather to me. And there's actually, I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but there's actually some nice sparkle. I die cut that with the largest Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. That is glued down to the front of a white card base. I trimmed this piece from a cut apart sheet. I cut it out right along the frame. I did send this cut apart through my printer using my little piggyback method and printed this sentiment on that. This again is using the typewriter hand font. Then I took some of our washi tape and I laid a bunch of washi tape next to each other to make the frame for behind that. This is actually 3 3/8 wide by 4 3/8 tall. I glued our cut apart sheet out on top of my washi tape background, and then I glued that to a thin mat of that oyster pearlescent cardstock that was in our kit. A few of the chocolate sequins from our sequin mix finish out this card. Bend with the wind and remain unbroken. That's actually a paraphrase of an old Confucius saying. I really like this card. I like the movement to it. I love the little stormy sky in the background. This is a nice sentiment. Bend with the wind and remain unbroken. Okay, now it's time to play with that great pocket watch die set that we got in this card kit. We are on the cream card base now, and we've got Make Time for the Things You Love. Look at that pocket watch. That is so much fun. Now, I wanted to do a gold pocket watch, so I grabbed some of that brushed gold cardstock that we got in the January kit from Love From Lizi, I believe, and I die cut the main part of that pocket watch from that brushed gold cardstock. Then I actually took one of my Hero Arts nesting circle dies and cut a piece of that oyster cardstock to be the background of the face. The circle die that's in the kit cuts a little bit smaller. I wanted that oyster cardstock to be behind the whole clock face, so I used one of my circle dies. I then die cut the little date square and the little clock circle straight through that oyster pearl cardstock, and I colored the little box frame and the clock with more of that shimmer powder, the Nouveau shimmer powder. Use that to paint those pieces. I then die cut the hands and the 18 from some plain white cardstock and colored those with more of the shimmer powder black. I then die cut one more piece of white cardstock to be the very back of this. I glued everything together. We have the white cardstock, then we have the oyster pearlescent cardstock, then we have the clock front and the date and the sweep second hand. I just trimmed off the little hour hand from that die to use as a sweep second hand. And the little hands of the clock. Oh my goodness, this is not all. I also found a piece of actual shiny gold cardstock, and I die cut the chain from that. Just glued that on top of the brushed gold. So our chain is a little shiny, the clock is a little more brushed. Love that die set. This is really a gorgeous pocket watch. I only wish I had a nice glass crystal I could put over the top of this pocket watch. Now this is a piece of that linen pattern paper from our pattern paper. That's cut 3 inches wide by 5.5 inches tall. I used my Silhouette software again to print this sentiment on that panel. Make time for the things you love. That again is in the typewriter hand font. That's glued down directly to our cream card base. Then I used more of our peel-offs to go down the 2 sides of that. I mounted the clock with some foam tape and glued the chain directly down to the card base. A few of the oyster sequins from our sequin mix adds a little bit more sparkle to this card. This is all very shiny, very lovely. Make time for the things you love. Now, when I was making this, I was originally intending it for a birthday card. I have a sister whose birthday is on April 18th, but by the time I finished it, I realized this would make a great retirement card. Don't people give gold watches for retirement these days? Anybody know anybody retiring on the 18th? Make time for the things you love, I think, is a perfect little retirement sentiment. There's our pocket watch die set. There's so many options available with that. Tiny, tiny pieces. But I tell you, having those little bitty tiny numbers should prove very useful in the years to come. I think this is my favorite sentiment in this entire kit, only because I'm a big Monty Python fan. Always look on the bright side of life. I fussy cut this pair of binoculars out of that ephemera sheet, and I thought it was going to be the exact same size as the binoculars on the cut-apart sheet, but lo and behold, they're a little bit smaller. That's okay. I can work with that, no problem. After fussy cutting those, I did emboss the top of those with some clear embossing powder just to add a little shine to that. I cut out this little wooden oval frame piece from one of our cut-apart sheets. That's 3 3/4 inches wide by 5.5 inches tall. I cut a couple of strips from that dark blue pattern paper that we had and glued those down to the sides of our card front and then glued that wooden frame on top of that. I went ahead and trimmed out all of these sentiment strips and attached those sentiment strips to this card front using foam tape. I attached the binoculars using some foam tape. I finished this off with some of the Dirty Bronze Nouveau drops that we got in the December 19 Love From Lizi kit. I love that Dirty Bronze. One of my favorite sentiments in this kit. When you're feeling in the dumps, don't be silly chumps. Just purse your lips and whistle, that's the thing. And always look on the bright side of life. A great sentiment regardless. Thank you, Eric Idle. Okay, I do still have a number of stamps from our stamp set that I haven't used yet. I thought they all went well together and would work quite nicely on a card. This is on our second cream card base. And we have Never Give Up on Your Dreams, featuring that great dream catcher stamp from our set. This also features the feather silhouette and the 2 arrows from our stamp set. I stamped those in a nice pattern down the 2 sides of our card base here and embossed those with the Love From Lizi Ivory Pearl embossing powder. I thought that worked really nice. I stamped the dream catcher on a piece of that oyster pearlescent cardstock, and I embossed those using the copper rose embossing powder from Love From Lizi. That stamped and embossed so nicely. That's a really great stamp. I went ahead and cut that piece out using a Hero Arts nesting oval die, and then I cut the mat from that from the next size of the Hero Arts nesting oval dies. That's from that great black tie cardstock that has that great colorful glitter on that. So there's a little extra sparkle there. I glued those 2 together and then mounted them to the card front with some foam tape. I fussy cut these 3 feathers from our ephemera sheet and then attached those to our card front. This is glued flat. These have got a little foam tape behind their tips and are glued flat at their stems. This sentiment is from our sentiment sticker sheet. I cut that in half and stacked those on top of each other. Never give up on your dreams. That's a great sentiment. A few more chocolate sequins from our sequin mix for a final touch. I think this card features that dream catcher very nicely, even though it's a fairly small stamp. I didn't have to stamp it 10 times to fill up this card. Never give up on your dreams. Wise advice for anyone. Now, I did get that Cogs cut and die embossing folder. Of course, that's sold out by now, but I was so thrilled to get it. I couldn't wait to play with it. This is on our other gray card base, and we've got You Are the Best Dad Ever little steampunk card. I cut and embossed that folder using that gray pearlescent cardstock. Then I actually took a really thin wash of that pearlescent powder, of that shimmer powder from Nouveau's, a really thin wash, and just brushed that over the top just to give a little extra contrast to that embossing. You see it's a little lighter in there, it's a little lighter around the edges. I thought that added a nice little touch of contrast contrast to that. I then attached that die cut to a piece of the oyster pearlescent cardstock using some foam tape. I then cut all 3 of the clock dies in our kit. These are the 2 little clocks that came in our pocket watch die set. This is the fob die that came as an add-on. I cut all of those out of the gray pearlescent cardstock, and then I cut little circles to go behind them out of the oyster pearlescent cardstock. This card is just about all pearlescent. I stamped "You Are the Best" and "Ever" using some Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide ink, and I did emboss that with some clear embossing powder. I did split that "You Are the Best" sentiment from our stamp set, just cut those 2 apart so I could stack them on top of each other. And then that "Dad," of course, is from our wood veneer alpha die cuts. I embossed that using the Love From Lizi silver dollar embossing powder. That came out really nice, all silver and oyster on this card. "You are the best dad ever." And I thought I was done, but I thought we were still missing something. So I remembered this little gear die. This was in the Love From Lizi July of 2017 card kit. This came along with a little bicycle die. I remembered we had that. I thought that's what I need to add to this card. I die cut a couple of those from the gray pearlescent cardstock again, and then mounted those inside the opening flat down to the background. That's just the touch it needed. A nice steampunk Father's Day card or a great birthday card, any kind of card for the best dad ever. Now, one of my favorite images in this kit was the anatomically correct heart, and I had to figure out a way to use it because I liked it so much. This is on the navy card base, and we have, yes, that heart is still beating. And on the inside, "I can't live without you." Okay, it's not a pun, but it's still a pretty good joke. I fussy cut this red heart from the cut apart sheet, and then I did emboss that with some clear embossing powder, make it nice and shiny and glistening. I die cut this little frame piece from a cut apart sheet using my Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die and some partial die cutting. I cut this much and then cut the other part to make that a whole 5.5 inches tall. That fit the little filigree parts of our frame here. I glued that down to our card base, used a couple of the thin white peel-offs of Love From Lizi. That's the front of our card. I did add a little action wobbler behind our heart here to give us some lub-dub with our heart. "I can't live without you." Boy, that's the truth. That wobbling heart just tickles me so much. Now, I've always been a big fan of Lawn Fawn, especially their stitched rectangle dies. I like Lawn Fawn dies. And the last couple of years, Lawn Fawn has come out with a lot of interactive card dies. But I've never bought any of them because I figured I could make my own reveal wheel window. I can make my own pop-up card. I can make my own pull tab card. But they recently came out with a new die set called the Magic Iris die set. I just got that about the same time that I got Lizi's kit, and I was dying to play with that. So for our final card, this is on the last off-white card base we've got. "Without you, I'd be lost." And it opens up to reveal a compass. There's a compass inside there. When I saw that map pattern paper and that compass ephemera piece, I thought that's the perfect opportunity to use this great iris die on a card. "Without you, I'd be lost." I did get all of the extras to go along with this iris die. I thought this was just kind of an amazing feat of engineering, and I figured it would probably take me way too long to figure out how this happens. Instead, I just treated myself and sprung for the whole set of dies. Really nice. I'm so excited to have this die in my collection and am looking forward to using it a lot more. I did cut this big panel out of that matte pattern paper, and then I die cut the 3 little sausages that make the iris out of that second piece of pattern paper. There are a million how to build the magic iris die tutorials on YouTube. I'll put a link to one of them in my description down below. It's really fairly simple, and once you do it one time, it's easy to do it over and over again. I fussy cut that compass from our ephemera sheet. I added a little bit of color to the white end of the needle on our compass. I glued that down to the card front, and then I covered that over with a piece of acetate. All compasses have glass over the top of them, don't they? I did, of course, cut that acetate bigger than the compass so I could glue it down along the edges and you wouldn't see it. It would just be a covering. Without you, I'm lost. Of course, I printed that on the last little scraps of our off-white cardstock, again using my Silhouette software and the typewriter hand font. I divided those up into little sentiment banners using my Lawn Fawn Everyday Sentiment banner dies. I glued those to the card front using foam squares. I had one little piece of that off-white cardstock left that I was able to take this little arrow and die cut that from that. The one thing different I did that I haven't seen anybody else do is I went ahead and punched a partial circle here so that it's easier to grab that little pull tab. Without you, I'd be lost. So here's a compass. So that's our 10 cards using the Love From Lizi March 2020 card kit. I did use a little bit of almost everything, I think. I used quite a bit of the cut-apart sheets. I used a number of the ephemera cut-aparts. I used a lot of our pearlescent cardstocks. I used a couple of our sentiment stickers. I used a good amount of our peel-offs. I used 5 sheets. There's those little sausages that make the iris part of that die work. I used 5 of our pattern papers, so I've got 7 pattern papers unused. I haven't used all of them. These are great to have on hand. Those will go in my stash. I used all of the image stamps in our stamp set, and I did use the 2 main sentiments in this. You are the best, and I love you just as you are. I used my extras, including that cog cut and emboss folder and that little fob clock die, and I used most of the embellishments from our embellishment bag. I used a lot of the sequins. I used the washi tape. I did use that storm cloud powder from Nuvo Drops. The only thing I really didn't get to use were those great bird cage die cuts, those wood veneer die cuts of bird cages. I didn't get to those, and I was going to use one of these tags, but I changed my mind. I used a little bit of everything else in the kit. All of these extras will find a loving home in my stash. I really enjoyed putting this batch of cards together. I think this is a really solid masculine set of cards and a pretty good variety here. We've got a number of encouragement cards, a retirement birthday card, a Father's Day birthday card, and some nicely humorous or macabre Valentine cards or I love you cards. I really love the high quality of all of the pattern papers. Really great cardstock quality on all of those. And hey, no pink in this batch of cards. Okay, the purple approaches it, but it's still purple. Of course, this kit has sold out already, as most of Lizi's kits do. If you want to be part of the fun, I would suggest subscribing. There'll be a link to the USA and Canadian subscriptions in my description down below. I do think Lizi's kits are one of the most unique card kits out on the market today, and it's always fun seeing what Lizi has in store for us month to month. Congratulations to our big winners in my 5,000 subscriber giveaway. Thank you so much for entering, and thank you so much for sharing your time with me here. I tell you, you are my inspiration. Please let me know which card or cards you like best. Remember to like me, list me, pin me, post me, share me with all of your friends. Don't run with scissors. And as always, happy crafting. For more detailed information, better pictures, and product links, please visit my website at cardcutups.com.